Hi, everybody. This is TK Kugler from Wasabi Ventures. Today, we're going to talk with Leucadia Therapeutics, and we have their founder here. Doug's going to give a quick intro and start talking about what they're solving. And with that, I will get out of the way and hand it over to Doug to take over.
Well, thanks very much, TK. It's good to talk to you again. I'm Doug Ethel. I was an academic professor for about 25 years, working on Alzheimer's disease, and I sort of left academia 2 years ago to focus on this venture full time because I'm absolutely sure we've got the solution here. We've identified what we think is the cause of Alzheimer's disease, and we have a way to stop it. So let me share this screen, and I'll get going. Okay, and we'll go for, there it is. Okay, can everybody see? I'll assume everybody's good.
Yep, we're good.
Yeah, so the company right now, we're raising a $3 million safe, up to $3 million. We've raised $1 million. We've sort of hit that tranche level, and we have enough money to do a lot of stuff with that. So we're sort of closing the round. We were closing it on May 30th, but we made a special extension to talk to Wasabi Ventures about maybe bringing in some more before we close it. And then we're going to move on to a Series A in 2020, and we're very excited about that. But the milestone we need to hit is one of the things I'm going to talk about today, and we should definitely be able to do it. I'm talking to you right now from our new facility. It's we just moved in. It's going to house our scanner, and I'll get into that in a minute. So our two products are on the bottom there. One is LTCA. It's a non-invasive Alzheimer's prognostic. It's an algorithm, a deep learning algorithm. And then Arethusa is a device that we think should restore the problem that's mounting and prevent Alzheimer's disease from occurring. So let's start. So Alzheimer's, as I'm sure you all know, is the holy grail of healthcare. It's 40 million patients worldwide, and there's no cure. Unfortunately, this field's become a graveyard for big pharma companies with $30 billion invested in an unbroken string of failed clinical trials. It's not that we've moved the ball down the field slowly. It hasn't gone anywhere in 25 years. And I think that has to do with a systematic error that we've figured out. And that's where we come in. So Alzheimer's disease, this is a human brain. It's looking at, if you cut right down the middle, you're looking at the inside of one of the hemispheres. And Alzheimer's doesn't start everywhere all of a sudden. It starts in one specific area. And it's shown here in red, this red highlighted area on the bottom in the middle. It starts there and then it spreads outward. It's like a campfire that turns into a California wildfire. And so the big question is, what is it? What's peculiar about that part of the human brain? And we think it has to do with how it clears toxins. All right, this is an older part of the brain called the allocortex, and it clears toxins from in between the cells, what we'd call the interstitial spaces, along the olfactory nerve. So it actually goes into the nasal mucosum. The image here below is from a completely independent confirmation of our hypothesis from a group at NYU. And they showed a 66% decline in the flow of CSF to the nasal mucosa in Alzheimer's patients. So this came out last year, which is fantastic. I'm talking to the PI from that study in a couple weeks, and we have a lot of things to talk about. But it's nice because it really came together. I hypothesized first in 2014 that this was really a mechanism involved in the disease. And of course, they cited my paper in this, and we really feel like we're gaining great traction here. So what happens is the fluid from these spaces, it flows along and it goes into the nasal cavity through this funny bone, this peculiar bone called the cribriform plate. And here we have two subjects. These are older subjects. On the left is a control subject. And if you see Lots of these holes here, these are apertures, so bundles of olfactory nerves, of odor receptor axons are bundling together from the nasal mucosa and going up into the brain through these holes. And the fluid is sort of oozing out around them very slowly. It's like a coffee maker, a drip coffee maker. On the right here is an Alzheimer's subject. Notice how much more bone there is there. What's happening is an age-dependent event where it's ossifying. Here, I'll show you a little movie here. We flip these around, you can see from the nasal side, there's lots of occlusion on the right. We'll highlight some of the apertures in red and take the bone away. And you can see the differences in the apertures. On the left, notice these apertures, they're completely occluded, the ones at the bottom, from the ones on the right. And this is a natural age-dependent event that's happening to everybody on this call. Everybody gets this, okay? If we live to 200, we'll get Alzheimer's by the time we all hit 130. So you'll have 70 years of dementia. So it's really a question for the longevity folks, and that's why I'm involved with them quite a bit. But what we want to do is find out, why does this occur? Well, one of the reasons it occurs is because we really only evolved to live 40, 45 years, and this isn't a problem. It's really a problem of age, okay? And the big question is, who's going to get Alzheimer's disease? Can we assess this and figure it out? We think we can. Okay, what we've done is look at the cribriform plates of 70 postmortem samples, a whole bunch of Alzheimer's patients and some controls, different ages, and what we've seen is on the bottom here. So on the left, on the y-axis here, this is the amount of opening space in all the apertures together. On the right are the age-matched controls in blue, and on the left are the Alzheimer's subjects. You notice there's a trend there, and right in the middle where these two meet, there's a threshold, after which there's not enough capacity to clear all the toxins away. So the blue line at the top is the mean of the age-matched controls, and the red line in the bottom is the mean of the Alzheimer's subjects. So we're really interested in finding out, can we figure out when this happens, and what can we do about it? And that's the essence of the company. So we've studied 70 postmortem samples, and right now we're doing something else with live patients. So our first product is an algorithm, a prognostic indicator, where we can assess the cribriform plate using a high-resolution CT scan. It's called a cone beam CT, or CBCT, which is widely used in dental practices for taking the panoramic view of the mouth. Well, we're going to move that up a little bit because the cribriform plate sits right between your eyes, 2 inches back. So we can do a scan with one of those machines and get a very high-resolution image of the cribriform plate in about 20 seconds. Okay, and it's a very low dose. It's 1% of the annual dose limit for dental x-rays for someone. So it's pretty good. And what we want to do is be able to figure out and plot out who's going to get it and when. It'll become a fast, reliable, non-invasive predictor of status of the cribriform plate in terms of how it progresses to Alzheimer's disease. And so since we're following this throughout life, we can start not when somebody has dementia, we can start when they're 50 and say, this is the shape of their cribriform plate. They're ossifying at this rate. They're going to hit the critical level here, and they're right here now. How long is that time? Okay, so we can tell them you have this long to really get the solution, which is our second product. And we think it'll be something that's very good, particularly for people with mild cognitive impairment. So 20% of seniors have some form of mild cognitive impairment. That's a little more than losing your car keys. They can still live independently, but things are getting foggy. And only a fraction of MCI subjects progress to Alzheimer's disease. And the billion-dollar question is, which ones? We think we can pick them out with our algorithm. And what we'd like to do is develop a standard screen that healthcare providers can use, almost like a diagnostic. They can use their own machines to do the scan, transmit it to Leucadia Therapeutics, and we'll use our algorithm to figure out where they are and how long it's going to be, and come up with an estimate and figure out which of the MCI subjects are likely to progress to Alzheimer's. Okay, as I say, I think it could be part of an annual checkup, almost like a PSA test for men over the age of 40. But this would be everyone over the age of 50. And by 2050, there'll be more than 1 billion senior citizens in the world, 500 million in China alone. Okay, so the market is astronomical. It really is. So what we're talking about here is it's really a data play, a healthcare data play. And so we're using our proprietary database and algorithm to do this. It's almost like we're going to become the Google of dementia, right? And the bigger our algorithm gets, the better off we are. Every sample that goes in makes it that much better. So we have worldwide patents pending on the algorithm. And in terms of the next step, the device, we have an issued patent in the US as well. Okay, this is on the bottom right. These are some of the deep learning algorithm tools we use, TensorFlow and Keras, if you're familiar with that area. Okay, so it's one thing to tell somebody you're going to get Alzheimer's in 8 or 12 years. It's another thing to offer a solution, and that's our second product. Because what we're really talking about here is a plumbing problem, okay? There's a natural flow system, an underground in-tissue stream that's clearing out the toxins in a slow and steady pace, and it's gradually being closed off with this ossification, this age-dependent ossification. And our device is an implantable device that we put in, and it restores the flow. You can see here on the right, so here's a nasal cavity here, and right up through the center of the nasal cavity at the top is the cribriform plate. So, excuse me, we've designed and engineered a device that looks a little different than this. This was from the patent. It's a sort of a simple version of it. We have a much more complicated device now where it goes in and it allows one directional flow of the fluid, because it's very important the fluid doesn't go back into the brain and cause a brain infection. So we've engineered that, and what we think it'll do is allow the clearance, again, the very slow, consistent clearance of these toxic metabolites, and it won't allow that campfire to start in the first place. So that's the device. We think it'll prevent the progression from MCI to Alzheimer's disease. So the first piece people will test it in will be people who don't have Alzheimer's, but they have MCI and occluded cribriform plate. So we're predicting that they're on the way. And the study we're doing right now will provide the data to justify that statement. So we'll put it in and it'll restore the flow, it'll get rid of their MCI, and they won't progress to Alzheimer's disease. The surgery itself, it's comparable to a wisdom tooth extraction. So it's twilight anesthesia. It takes less than half an hour for the surgical team to do it, only probably about 5 minutes once they get everything set. Our team has actually put it into cadavers. So here's a picture of one of 4 cadavers that they tried it on. And this is from the brain side. You can see here on the left, the brain's been pulled back. The cribriform plate's here in the middle, right? And there's the device poking through. So that was put in from the nasal side and it held in place. It looks like it's working pretty well. So what we want to do is a clinical trial of a small number of subjects, putting it in, and very few, but some investors have said, well, I don't know if I want somebody drilling a hole in my head. But put it this way, if going to the dentist for a root canal would prevent you from getting a disease that will slowly rob your mind and personality and life and kill you in a few years, I think you'd probably do it. Okay. So this is really our go-to-market slide. On the top there is the diagnostic, LTCA. What we're doing right now this year in 2019 through 2020 is we're doing Project Cribros. And so that is a study of 2,000 cribriform plates. As I say, it takes 20 seconds for the scan. And we're recruiting them here from Southern California, which is a very diverse demographic population, so we can easily mimic the US population from the census, and we need to do that. We think we'll have that data by 2020, and we'll continue to scan those people. That's the second one down. Notice how the Project Cribros goes along. We're going to follow those people for 5 years and find out which ones with occluded cribriform plate turned into Alzheimer's subjects. Okay? And that'll allow us to go to the FDA and apply for a prediction of Alzheimer's. But before that, in 2020, next year, we'll have an algorithm where we can take somebody with MCI or somebody without MCI and say how long it's going to be before they have an occluded cribriform plate that's going to kick off an Alzheimer's pathology. And that's probably most valuable in the near term to big pharma companies with billions of dollars of trials, and they're desperate to find biomarkers to populate their studies with people who don't have the disease, but they're going to get it. And we can help them with that. It's sort of a short-term opportunity for us to make revenue until our diagnostic sort of picks up steam. And we can also probably go back and do some of their failed studies. If the subjects are still around, we can do a quick scan and figure out, if they populated the study this way instead of that way, maybe they would have had a good results. We think it's something that'll be very attractive to Janssen and Merck and Biogen, companies with very big failures on their hands, and they don't know where to go. What they've been doing is working on the amyloid hypothesis. Now they're working on tau, and it's all related to the same problem. It's a systematic error. They're not going after the cause, they're going after the effects, and we're going after the cause. So it doesn't matter if their studies work or not. We'll generate some revenue by helping them populate their studies. But in the meantime, we'll be rolling out the diagnostic to healthcare providers such as United Health and national programs in Britain and Canada, maybe the VA, organizations with large numbers of people, and they need to know which ones are likely to progress to Alzheimer's in a quick, easy, non-invasive way. And we think we've got that. So that's the diagnostic. Now, the device, what we'd like to do is apply to do the first study with the device in 2020. So we call the device Arethusa. It's a play on words. There was a Greek water nymph named Arethusa, and she was being chased by an amorous river god, and Artemis turned her into a hidden underground stream, and that's really what we're creating with the device. So Arethusa, we should have enough data in early 2020 to approach the FDA and say, listen, here's 2,000 people. You can see how the cribriform plate's ossifying. We can follow that. We can predict it. If we can correct that, we think it'll prevent them from progressing to Alzheimer's. And since it is a device, the regulatory hurdle is much lower than it is for drugs. So it's only going to be a 2-year study. Most of the Alzheimer's studies are 8 or 10 years and cost $500 million on up. Our study we can do for probably less than $150 million. And that would be for 50 or 100 subjects, far less than that probably. And so what we want to do is find these people with MCI and occluded cribriform plates from our Project Cribro study. So we'll already know who those people are. We'll bring them into the study and we'll give them the device. So what we think should happen is, first off, since we're restoring the flow, the normal flow that was there at earlier ages, the toxins that have accumulated so far should clear. So the mild cognitive impairment, the fuzziness, is due to the accumulation of things like oligomeric A beta and other unclassified metabolites. So what we're doing is basically clearing them all away. And so their mild cognitive impairment should improve in a matter of days or weeks, right? So by the end of a year after, we should have a lot of data showing that their MCI went down and stayed down for a year, okay? Then we go to the FDA and we say, listen, we've done 50 subjects or 100 subjects over this 2-year study. It's very clear it reduces MCI, and we ask for an MCI indication for the device to treat this specific group of MCI patients, okay? What we're also doing, though, is following those people for a few more years. And we're going to compare how many of them progress to Alzheimer's disease, compare them to people in the study who had the occluded cribriform plates and MCI but didn't get the device. They didn't want to be in the study with the device. And if we get a big difference, and there's a lot fewer of our treated subjects getting Alzheimer's and a lot more of the controls, then we have a great thing to take to the FDA and get FDA approval for our device for an Alzheimer's indication. So really what we've got is 2 products and 2 indications. So in terms of revenue, that's at the bottom. Right now we're doing the safe round. We think we can start generating revenue from pharma partnerships maybe 2021, and the Series A. Obviously, when we have the algorithm completely, built out and it's humming, we'll be in a great position to go ask for Series A funding, maybe even a jump on a couple of steps. Probably an acquisition target for big pharma partners if they realize it's a competitive advantage. So the revenue is sort of down here, and this is just a thumbnail sketch, but considering it's taken into account the hundreds of millions of seniors and how many of them are likely to progress to Alzheimer's disease. Just as seniors, if we're getting not even 100% of the market, but a much smaller fraction of the market, charging $200 per year per sample, which is a very cheap diagnostic test. The revenues we'd have down here would be, certainly enough to make it a going concern. Okay, so that's sort of it. Do you have some questions there?
Yeah. So I was going to jump in. So that was really, really good, Doug. So I thought that did a perfect job of telling your story, and you did it in 18 minutes instead of 15. But that's pretty darn good for an entrepreneur and a former academic. I mean,
recovering academic, yeah.
Yeah, your former students, I'm sure, would appreciate that. So let me kick off the questions, and so everyone that's is online, once again, if you're in the Zoom app, you can chat a question. If not, I will open up all the phone lines and give folks a chance to ask a question once I as Doug's doing this answer. But my question to you, Doug, is what is the primary place that you're going to use the funds that you're raising right now? If you had to bucket it, use of funds, the standard venture question that you get asked. Give us a sense of how you're envisioning using the funds that you're raising right this second.
Well, a significant cost is going to be recruiting the right people. There are some strategic hires we need to make. We need a chief medical officer full-time to make sure that we shepherd through the FDA correctly. We also need to bring on board additional regulatory consultants. We need a chief technology officer, a PhD level person with machine learning experience. We've been doing a good job on it, but we really need to bring in somebody who does this seriously. And then we also need to bring on a chief operating officer. I'm good at the science, but we really need a chief financial officer and a chief operating officer to manage things as they go. Right now, we have money to run the study and bring in a lot of people and push the algorithm. Another thing we need to invest in is to go that extra 5 to 10% we need to apply for regulatory approval for our device. We've got a device that works very well. We need to do some biophysical testing. We probably will need to put it into a pig or something just to show, that the head doesn't explode or something ridiculous. The FDA really likes that. And we also need to build out a few other things. I mean, we're talking about a massive amount of data. And although we use the cloud, we use AWS, we'll probably go to Azure from Microsoft very soon. We need computer people to do that, and we also need to bring in more people so that we can push people through the scanning process. In addition, we need business development people who will go to Pfizer and Merck and say, listen, we've got this great product. This is how it works. I come in and do my science talk, but they do the nitty-gritty of convincing them that it's a good business move to partner with us. So really, it's the people that we need to bring in. We can do it on the million we have now, but we can do it better, faster, and more efficiently with more money. And so that's really what we're using the safe round for.
Perfect. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute folks, and if you have questions, this will give you a chance to ask those of Doug. So I'm going to count to 3, 1, 2, 3, and unmute folks. I got one chat question, so I'll start with that as others, and then we'll open up to voice questions. Who else is currently on the team, Doug?
On the team, well, we have a lot of people who aren't full-time. So we have 2 neurosurgeons, director of neurosurgery and chief of neurosurgery at 2 nearby hospitals, very big hospitals. They've been working with us for a number of years, and they have about 20 neurosurgery residents who cycle through and do rotations with us. And they've helped us with the surgery, obviously, and the design. We've also got a consultant from USC who's an expert in radiology. He's been doing the high-resolution scans of the cribriform plate. That's an expertise we need. We want to add a different chief medical officer to the team. We've also got business help from the Methuselah Fund from Sergio Ruiz. I don't know if you know Sergio. He's helped us out quite a bit with the business development. And also we've got some contacts with some well-known and some lesser-known investors who are happy to help us with guidance and advice on that. The company itself, we've got 3 employees. We're about to expand that because next week our scanner is installed, and we'll be hiring staff to run the scanner because they have to have regulatory approval for that. We also need people who can bring subjects in and put them through the memory tests, and we'll be hiring more people, and it's really been a matter of getting things in place. In terms of regulatory, again, we've gone the consultant route. I'm lucky there because my brother has been in regulatory affairs for 30 years. He's not involved in the company, but he's a great resource when I say, hey, who would be a good person to do this or that? Who's a good consultant? And he's always helpful with some suggestions, but what we need to do is expand that a little bit. And then that's the heart of the team right now. As I say, I'm eager to bring on a CFO or CEO / one or the other or both to help out with the business side of the company. But we've been doing pretty well on a restricted budget.
Perfect. Any questions from anybody else on the phone? Everybody's got their line open, and if you could just say your name before you ask your question, that would be great.
Hey, it's Vladimir here.
Yep, go ahead, Vlad.
Sure. Can you go over the terms again? I don't think it was fully clear on the investment terms on the SAFE round.
The terms are, it's a $17 million cap, an 85% discounted rate.
So it's a 15% discount.
Right. So it's basically a $14 million valuation at this point.
Understood.
Cool.
How long have you been working on this full time?
Working on the company or the round?
The company.
Oh, I started working on it as an academic, and I sort of realized that this was the case. I mean, I was working on the sort of the same stuff a lot of people in Alzheimer's working on. We did mouse models. We did looking at toxins in cultured neurons. We did stem cells, and we also did a very interesting study on immunological changes in Alzheimer's disease. And then I sort of realized about 8 years ago that we were not making any progress. That we had to go back to the drawing board. And what I did was spend 2 years going through all the old literature and questioning every assumption and all the dogma and saying, well, what if this is wrong? What if that's wrong? How far back do we have to go to find that branch point where we threw something away that we should have kept? And it led me along to thinking of the disease really as problems with the flow of toxic metabolites, which are normally cleared from the body through the lymphatic system, but the brain does it a different way because the blood-brain barrier doesn't allow for plasma, which is what turns into lymph, to leak into the vessels. And so what I did was, after those 2 years, I published a paper in 2014, basically outlining this and suggesting that this hypothesis, might hold some weight. And what happened was I presented this at a conference in San Francisco, and the Methuselah Foundation, they came up and said, we really like your idea. It's really novel, and we'd love to fund it, but we'd rather you start a company than us giving it to the university administrators. And I'd always had an itch to go the entrepreneurial route. So what I did was started the company as a virtual company. We got the samples, it took us a while to figure out how to get the samples out without destroying them, how to scan them properly, how to do all that stuff. And then we started getting great scans, and things fell into place. And in 2017, I decided that it was time to embrace it from the private sector, because getting funding for this from the NIH takes a long time. And if you have any experience with the NIH, they love the dogma. What they do is they fund the dogma, momentum. And what we were saying is that that's wrong. And so the private sector was more receptive to that. And I stepped away from academia. I was a professor and chair of the graduate college in 2017, June 2017, because I'm absolutely sure that we're right here. And this is the fastest way to get it to the clinic and to solve this problem.
Just wanted to hop in, and for everyone on the call, tomorrow, all of you will have access to our whole, the Wasabi Ventures whole due diligence package. So anybody that's a partner, so you'll have access to that, so you can see all the questions around term and pricing and our thoughts on different aspects of the business. You'll see all of that. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that was coming. Any other questions from the crowd?
Am I completely clear?
Yes. Yeah. It sounds like you did a pretty good job. I have one more question, Doug. If you had, and this is always a tricky question for an entrepreneur, if you had your, you could choose either in any route that ends up. What's the final route here from a commercialization standpoint? Is it an acquisition? Is it an acquisition earlier? Is it an acquisition later? What's your dream at this point?
Okay, well, I'm reading exit into that. I think there are a few opportunities here. I'm open to a few. First off, is probably acquisition from a big pharma company, because if they realize that we can help them populate their studies, it's a competitive advantage they don't want the others to have. Even if they're never going to use it, they want to do that. So that's one possibility. Also, there are other players in the Alzheimer's area, such as Denali, which doesn't really have anything, Axivant, which is a big disaster. They might be looking around for something better. They might approach us as an acquisition, but I think we can probably go a long way, because we're talking about something that doesn't have a large cost outlay. We're asking the healthcare providers to send us a scan using their own equipment. So if we need to get the ball rolling by offering a sort of a free thing to the FDA, we'll do 10,000 vets and tell you what the results are. That will make our algorithm bigger. It won't really cost us any money, any significant money, and it'll create tremendous credibility for us. So there's an opportunity for us to go a long way as an independent company, but really what we need to do is get size quickly, because it's kind of like Google and the other search companies, right? Once they hit a certain market share, they had so much momentum. And that's really where we are. We're the first movers in this. Nobody's anywhere close. If they picked up today and said, oh, we're going to copy what Doug's doing, they're going to have about 3 years of data to really figure out how this structure works and what they're supposed to look at. So we think we're well ahead, and we've been kind of on the stealth mode for a while. And so in terms of exits, we could go for a nice Series A, probably a public offering when we have something from the FDA, which should be in short order in terms of the algorithm. And if we can start marketing that, we can create revenue and certainly go for a public offering. We could join forces with another company, have a strategic investment from a big partner. Medtronic is the biggest device maker around. They could suddenly decide that we're doing something they're interested in. So there are a number of options. I'm not really closing any of those avenues off, and I'm open to them. And I appreciate that investors are concerned about how long it's going to be before they get their money back. But also remember, Peter Thiel cashed out of Facebook for $2.5 billion, and he'd have $15 billion right now if he'd hung on a little longer.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone on the phone? Okay. Well, I think Doug, you told a great story, and you were very clear on the big problem that you're solving and how you're trying to do it in a very disruptive way. So thanks for the time today, and we'll be talking soon. For those on the call, if you like I said, tomorrow you'll be able to log on and our platform and see our complete package. So thanks everybody for coming this afternoon / this evening, and we'll talk soon.